Do y'all love podcasts? Are you podcast people? Yeah, podcast people. Who isn't a podcast person? Come on. Nota is a content platform that revolutionizes how millions of people experience podcasts. Nota takes you beyond the episode and makes podcasts even better with visual show notes. This is so cool. Nota first took the PubTalk stage virtually back in May of 2020 when CEO Brian Wald was looking for an experienced developer to build upon his existing MVP. I'm excited to hear how the company has grown and what Brian envisions for the future. So where are you, Brian? Get on up here. All right, come on up.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. I had a 7-hour layover in Denver airport yesterday, so that's a big airport, but that's a lot of time to kill. Anyway, it's great to be here, and as you mentioned, last time was virtual. So this is very nice to be here in person. So I want to thank the PubTalk team for having me back for this update. My original PubTalk, we were on the verge of launching a mobile app for the iPhone. And more specifically, it was a podcast player that was going to be able to allow people to see, save, and share the most interesting things mentioned in their favorite podcast episodes. Turns out that building a podcast player that's as good as Apple and Spotify functionality-wise and brings in all these visual notes is a little easier said than done. So we got close. This is the bad part of the update. We got close. We went through 3 different developers to try to get this project done. So my co-founder and I had gone through 3 iterations of people telling us, I got the concepts. You're going to bring these visual notes in with the podcast. It's going to show the books, the videos, all the things they're talking about. Piece of cake, I can build it. Time and time again, they just fell short. So after the 3rd failure, my partner and I said, do we give up? Like, no way, because during this process, we got to talk to so many people within the podcast community, and they all were like, that's a great idea. As soon as you guys launch, let me know. I'm going to get on your platform. So we said, well, we're not going to give up, but we can't continue to fund this thing by paying people to do the software development that we couldn't do on the mobile side. So instead, we said, let's just pivot. Let's get back to basics. When we first thought of this idea, what did we want to do? We wanted to make it very easy for people who are listening to podcasts to easily access the most noteworthy things mentioned in those episodes. How can we do this? Well, my partner is a seasoned web developer. I have business development and marketing and product skills. Let's just build a mobile-friendly website version. So we kind of went back to MVP, and so far it's been really good. There's a lot of advantages to actually having a web-based platform versus a mobile app. First of all, mobile apps, there's some friction there. In order to access all that content, you have to install an app. Well, if I'm a podcast player, why am I going to choose Nota over Spotify, Pocket Casts, Overcast, et cetera? There's a lot less friction. Second is that now we are the controllers of our destiny. We are not reliant on a third party or another developer. My partner and I can do all the work. Third, it saves a lot of money. With a podcast player, there's all sorts of third-party services and crawlers and things that are always spinning, and you're paying the bills for this stuff even if no one's using it. So a mobile side, a lot cheaper. Fourth and final thing is that when you build a website, all the content you put on that website, it lives in the internet, and it gets indexed by Google. And so now I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but that's probably the biggest thing that we've seen having a web-based internet platform versus the mobile app. So we've created a website. We built the back end. We do our content management, our publishing. That's been all built in-house. And in terms of kind of where we're at now, we have integrated 30 really popular podcasts onto the platform. And collectively, these podcasts represent around 30 to 50 million monthly listeners. So I think Tim Ferriss, Joe Rogan, Freakonomics Radio, All In Podcast. So we just went out and said, let's find 30 really good, noteworthy podcasts. Let's bring them in. Let's get their content onto the site. So we've got those 30 This is all kind of in a soft launch. We haven't done any marketing. We're just kind of building. We're still a foundational stage, testing everything, kicking the tires. But we've had about 600 episodes that have been published through our platform, and about 7,000 individual note cards are now part of the Nota.fm ecosystem. And the biggest benefit we've seen so far is that we're getting traffic for free. So when people are searching Joe Rogan show notes, we're now on the first page of Google. And that happened in like just several months, which is pretty exciting because there's other websites that have been doing Joe Rogan show notes for years, and within a few months, we're already above them. So we've kind of structured the website in a way that's very SEO friendly. And because of that, the way that the architecture is and some of the tricks that we've done in terms of labeling things, we're getting a lot of really good traffic simply from people doing searches on relevant podcasts. So month over month, our user base is growing. Our next steps, starting Monday, we're going to be proactively going out and talking to podcasters directly, getting them on board, and using them as evangelists to help grow our audience. So we have a podcaster. Actually, we have a local podcast. You guys should check this out. It's called the Circling Podcast by Adam Short. He is a longtime Bend resident. Great podcast because he talks about everything related to Central Oregon, business leaders, community leaders. He just sits down and just picks their brain. Anyway, I met him, and he now works with Nota, and he just sends me his content every time he publishes an episode. And he says, hey, Brian, get this up. Boom, it's done. But the benefit is he's telling all of his listeners, hey, people listening to this podcast, if you want to see all the things I'm talking about, go find me on Nota.fm. So it's a nice little strategy there. And then lastly, I guess, the only, you're supposed to have an ask, right? If anyone knows a podcaster or somebody in the podcast space, would love to get introduced to them. And if anyone knows a talented web designer, might have some project work available for them. But otherwise, the update is my co-founder and I are kind of humming along right now. We're playing the long game. We're just getting content, flooding the podcast space with relevant content.
This is a great update, Brian. Yeah. So cool.
Thank you.
I loved when you presented back in May of 2020, and I love that you've made this big change. It makes so much more sense for the two of you. Fun fact, Joe Rogan and I share a birthday. The third person I share a birthday with, or the second person I share a birthday, Hulk Hogan. Yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. It'll make sense if you think about it. So what's been your favorite part about making this big pivot?
Actually just seeing traffic to our website without us spending a dime.
Yeah, like it could be easy.
And so, and I'm a marketer. I can spend money all day and bring in traffic, but this is really just kind of a simple, free, organic thing that we're seeing. And the moment somebody starts mentioning, Joe Rogan has 11 million users. And one day he just says, hey, I'm talking all this stuff, but if you go to Nota, you can find it all.
So cool.
If we just take 5% of that audience, we're close to a couple million people overall using the website.
Oh, that's so fun. That's so fun. August 11th. So if anyone wants to know. Okay. Any questions for Brian? Yes, in the back.
Yeah, so you mentioned Tim Ferriss, Joe Rogan, and the guy here. What about female-oriented?
Okay, she wants to know. She said you mentioned a lot of male podcasters. Do you have any female-oriented podcasts?
None that I personally do the management for. My partner's daughter does some fashion ones, and I'm blanking on the name.
You need help. She says you need help.
Do you want to do it?
Do you want to help?
No. So I mean, there's a rationale for this. It has nothing to do with gender. It's simply certain podcasts. They have a level of cadence that's manageable or not manageable. If you have a podcast that publishes every single day, it's hard to keep up with putting notes in the system. You can also have podcasts that don't have anything relevant to that's really noteworthy.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
Yes. Okay. But no, there's certain podcasts that are really like they're talking about videos and they're talking about product and they want to promote their sponsors. So we've had to like kind of thin out who we want to support manually. So we're not doing a full automation. We're grabbing some stuff automatically, but then we're having to put a manual layer to curate some of this content.
Right.
We have to
These
be
are
very
podcasts
thoughtful.
that have to work with the platform.
Right. So it's what's our biggest ROI bang for the buck? And there's certain podcasts that have millions of listeners, and they also have easily accessible links to their show notes that we can automatically grab.
Like
So there's-
creatine powders and stuff like that.
Yeah. So
What about the Goop? Isn't Goop a podcast? I feel like that's got a lot of stuff.
Goop is a great podcast, but Goop, Gwyneth, does not provide any show notes for her podcast. They're not in the
gotcha.
description. They're not on the website. They're not any sort of third-party tools. So we can't grab her. I'd have to listen to Goop every day to get it, and I'm not going to do that.
You're not going to do that, Brian.
that's-
you know what? I'm not
the
going to do
target
that. I'm
audience
not
for
going to
Goop.
do that, Brian. But you're obviously open to, like, once people understand the type of podcast you're looking for, like, send it Brian's way.
Of course. So the next thing would be, I'd love to work with Goop and just say, hey, great episode. Can you send me 10 links from that episode? Done. And we put it in the system. and
What
it's
about
done.
My Favorite Murder? Isn't that what it's called?
That's another one, but
yeah,
again,
no show notes.
so we are going
not
to next
selling
step is to
anything, right?
approach people like them and
Yeah.
say, we've already support these podcasts. We want to work with you directly, but we can't get your show notes easily.
Yeah.
Can you send it to us?
Yeah.
And we'll manually do it for you.
And then can you work in some product placement, like toothpaste or whatever? Yeah.
They all have sponsors
Yeah,
that
no,
they
they
want to
do.
promote, and now visually they can say to their advertiser, I'm going to read it on air, and it's going to be shown here, and you're going to be able to see how many people clicked on it and how many people saw it. So get some analytics.
And so what would be like the ideal number of podcasts that you'd have listed? Just, is this infinite or?
It's not the whole universe of podcasts because show notes don't make sense for every
I would
podcast,
hope
but it's
not.
going to be, could be hundreds or thousands, and that would require probably a team or better automation. But I envision at some point having some category level account managers that say, I own the finance category or business category, and I support 50 different finance, Dave Ramsey show and Freakonomics. I understand best practices on how to promote their content. I manage and input and give them reporting. So maybe a selection of account managers
Yeah.
that by vertical would be the,
It's very cool.
nice.
It's very cool. Okay, any other? Okay, yes, right here. What's your revenue model?
it will be ad-based. So I'm an ads guy, worked at Facebook, Yahoo, everything's feed related. I'm just not gonna break the system. I'm gonna kind of do what Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter kind of make their bread and butter. There'd be room for some level of premium services, things, rev share, things like that, but in general, the way that the content comes in on mobily, when you listen to an episode, all the note cards, it's almost like Instagram posts. They just feed down. There's no reason why in the fourth slot it couldn't be an ad unit. And we'd ultimately like to do a rev share with that podcaster. So, hey, podcaster, we're going to bring in stamps.com. It's going to be in the fourth slot here. We'll give you 50% of that revenue, and we'll take 50%, which gives the podcaster a little bit of incentive to say, hey, you guys, you can listen anywhere, but if you go to Nota.fm, I kind of get credit for it.
Oh, that's brilliant. So it probably would help people to take a look. So Nota.fm, it's Noto.fm, is that right?
Nota.
Nota.
Dot
Oh,
FM.
man.
Yeah, just do Nota.fm/Rogan if you want to see what a sample of an episode would be like.
Yeah, cool. I think it always helps to have a visual. Well, I'm great. It's great to hear from you. I
Thank you
love
for
that you
having
made
us.
the changes. Yeah, and I hope
Yeah.
you'll keep us updated. You'll come back
Yeah,
again.
it's exciting. It's nice to be in the control of your own destiny. It was
Yeah, I
very
hear you.
challenging to have somebody. When it comes to mobile app full stack engineering development, that is way over my head.
Yeah.
And it's over my partner's head. He's a great web developer, but that's a different ballgame.
Yeah.
And I got to give credit to Jesse here real quick, our keynote speaker coming up. So much love. So what I really appreciate is that when we're getting close to launch, our developer said, oh, we got this. You guys, we're ready to go. I got introduced to Jesse, and we talked a bit, and I really trusted him. And I said, Jesse, do you mind taking a look under the hood here? Because I can't read code. I'm not a coder. Can you kind of understand the architecture and let me know what this developer is telling me? Is it ready for prime time? Jesse sat down, took the time, talked, and he politely said, I don't think it's really built to last at this point. And as a dream, he killed my dream, but he was honest and trustworthy, and I appreciated that. And that led us to really have a tough conversation with the developer, go down another path, and but it saved us a lot of time. So I appreciate an entrepreneur who's had a lot of success,
Yeah.
comes and helps a
Yeah,
startup
that's invaluable.
entrepreneur, and
Well, and good for you to be like, okay, yeah, I'm open to that. I trust you. You're the
Yeah.
person to listen to on this, and
Yeah.
so let's try it a different way. That's, I think, really important characteristic to have in
Yeah.
what you're doing. Well, awesome.
all right,
Great
thank you.
to have you, Brian.
All right, thank you.